invite you, as you listen to a few people tell stories from those early days, to think about the question that you have used in terms of our study of Scripture. That a lot of Scripture was written with this thought: what do we want to pass on? What do we want to tell the children? What's really important? And so, as we hear these stories, that's in a way what we're doing. It's like when you are reading in the Old Testament, and there are some of these stories that sound so unusual, and you think, well, they were asking, what do we want to tell the children? And that's exactly what we're thinking about here today. What do we want to pass on about our story? And so hold that in mind, and we will find a place to talk about it later on. Go ahead, Ralph.
Okay.
Should we just talk about that?
No, I think just wait. Yeah. And you can be there, or you can be at the pulpit, whichever you like.
Hello, all. This is an email I sent to Mary Ellen, so I'll just read it. This is so great. So Lane and I have been wanting an Episcopal church for a long time. Lane's mother died, and I called the Episcopal church in Little Falls to see about setting up a funeral for Lane's mother. I talked to a woman named Lou Tax. She said, I'll get the team together and see what we can come up with. I said, what do you mean, get the team together? She told me about total ministry. They had a total ministry team going on. And so then after that, I realized that I could have an Episcopal church. Lane and I could have an Episcopal church here because my theory was you always had to have a priest, and then they got the thing going. They said, oh, well. So I called up Sandy Holmgren, who is a priest and who was in charge of total ministry in Minnesota, and she said that it was used for churches as they failed. I said, well, no one had ever used it to start a church. I said, well, Lane and I met with Sandy, and then we drove over to Ely, and Ely had a total ministry thing going. Then we went to Trinity in Hermantown, and the total ministry celebrant at Trinity said she could come to Grand Marais and do a service, and the bishop okayed it, and he did. So then we picked a date. We put an ad in the paper, and then Lane started answering the telephone. Which is quite amazing.
Thank you, Ralph.
Well, so maybe I'll repeat a little bit. A little background about us is that we moved here in 1988, and we tried all the churches, almost all the churches in town. And we actually joined the Catholic Church. Yeah. But then a lot of bad stuff happened there, and we quit going to church altogether. And we did in that time that we did house services with when my family had come out for friends or different things, and we had our own services, which was pretty cool. And then we started having granddaughters, and so 10 years ago, pretty soon, 10 years, Lee was born, and we thought, we have to baptize her. And and it was our 50th anniversary, so that in December, we rented Maple Hill Church, and we renewed our vows, and then we baptized her with a whole bunch of friends and relatives, and had a big party here also. It was like an all afternoon occasion. It was pretty cool, and we thought, we have to do something. We have to do something, and I don't do things exactly what Ralph does, and he put the ad in the paper, and then I answered the phone. But so that this ad that we put in the paper, we got prices, and we used the Episcopal shield, and then we thought, this needs to be in color, because Episcopalians don't always maybe read until they see if they will look at what's written here, And before our first meeting, when we all got together, we realized this isn't a house church. And so we called Jack Maple Hill again. And we've been here ever since. And as these people called, Dave and Patsy called, and then I talked to you. Remember that? I called you a couple of times and said, what do you do now? What about this or this or this or what, you know? And Dave, and you guys weren't here for that first thing. You were here a couple of weeks later. And almost when you came into town, we met you at the Angry Trout and sat down and talked to Nate. But the whole thing with all these calls that we got, and I was really firm in my belief that I wasn't going to go out and say to anybody, hey, we're starting an Episcopal church, and I know that you've done that, or whatever, because I did not want to be responsible for anybody, like that I was going to have to babysit them, bring them along, or whatever. And so I said this, if anybody calls or anybody comes, it's because of God. It is not because of Rolf and I. It has all to do with God. And God did the work, and He still is. And then that Lee and Carl, they didn't call. I knew, and I wanted to call them, and I didn't. And then God, one day, I walked into the credit union, and there's Carl and Lee sitting there, and they both stood up and came over, and they said, they're coming. And then, was it like the week before, there was a playhouse play dinner thing in the basement of the Catholic Church, and Val was there. And I didn't know Val, and she said, and I said, and she came. I mean, she had called, but I didn't know her or anything. So it was amazing how God really put this together. We didn't. And then, so we got to our house, we had this, and the women from Trinity came up, 2 or 3 of them, can't remember. And I'm sure we ate, because we always eat, but I don't know. Was it a potluck? Mm-hmm. Good, okay. Yeah. But, and we discussed what could we do? And it was, we all realized this is a commitment. If we're gonna do this, it's not, have a service here or a service there. It's have weekly services, and I said, can we do that? Can we have morning prayer every week and do this? And we all said, yeah, we can do it. And except for one person, do you remember at the table, that guy from Homeland, he came to say that we should all just join the Lutheran Church in Homeland. And nobody really said much about that. But so we sat around the table and we picked out hymns to sing on Sunday, and I think that's when we came up. We said "Spirit of the Wilderness." I think that night, and I think it's been that ever since. And then the next morning, Rolf and I got up early and went for a walk, which is kind of unusual to get up that early and go for a walk. And we said, "This is big. This is a really big commitment. Can we really do this?" And yeah, we decided we would. There wasn't a lot of us, but there wasn't a few of us either. But that whole first year, remember how if we were going to be gone, or if Carol and we were going to be gone, or you and John, or whatever, we all kind of said when we were going to be gone, so we were sure we had enough people to be 2 leaders, the music, someone in the pews, and someone in the homily that we had. And sometimes I think we had 6 people, but it was great, And then I don't remember, Lorraine, I think she was busy. She couldn't attend the first meeting. So did we just sing a cappella that Sunday? Or was one of those women from Duluth played the organ, I think, so, of the songs we picked. But Lorraine Carpenter, who isn't with us anymore, here on earth, she died. Yeah, she came, and she lived like 60 miles up the trail, and she would come down and go home, and come down the next day and go home. And I believe if we didn't have Lorraine, I don't think we would have made it, because to the Maple Hill Church, not to us, but whatever. And so Ralph and I went to Target and bought like an $80 little organ. And that Lorraine, she just played that the whole time. She didn't complain about it, but then other people. And then when Lorraine got sick and she wasn't with us any longer, we tried a few Sundays of a cappella, which was awful. And I believe we would have died then if we didn't get the box. And there was quite a discussion about the box because it was pricey. And we didn't start this morning. But and now we have more people, but that's what we had. And anyhow, so the recessional hymn today is a hymn that Lorraine had marked in the book, and I think it fits our life here. Thank you. Barbara is, yeah.
We bought a lot and started building a cabin. For a number of years, this was a weekends and vacations only cabin. But when Reed retired, we were able to stay most of the summer. We always went by the theory that God so trusts Episcopalians, he gives us the summer off. We loved Greenwood, and for many years we thought, gee, I bet it's fun to live in Grand Marais all year. And in 1991, we found we could do so. But we had no church. We found a local one, which I'm sure has changed now. It's similar to the Episcopal Church, and I think you know what church I'm talking about. And so we thought, well, we'll go to that one. The rector thought we were fine, we were Episcopalians. But instead of being greeted with smiles and handshakes and welcome, we got stared at big time. And we thought, this isn't going to work. And we eventually went back to Tucson and back to summers only at Greenwood. Then came the summer. The Lindquist put the ad in the paper. Any Episcopalians out there? We were excited, to say the least. People seemed to crawl out of the woodwork. I should say wilderness. There was really going to be an Episcopal church in Grand Marais. We had to go home that first winter, and we wanted to do something for this fledgling church. We came up with the idea of, hey, they need a processional cross. We looked on the internet, and found there were many different ones available. We told the members to pick one, and we'd see that it got to them. Then Lee called, which she claimed she didn't, but I know she did. She said that the group talked it over and decided they'd like one made out of diamond willow. I thought I knew everything that grew up here, but I never heard of diamond willow. She described a wood that had diamonds in it when you peeled the bark off. I still couldn't picture it, but if the people wanted, that was fine. When I saw it the next summer, I was somewhat taken aback. But everyone seemed to like it, so I thought, well, so be it. Now, it wasn't long before that crazy cross started to grow on me, and I couldn't imagine Spirit of the Wilderness using any other. Our kids, that is Ella and Lee Hedstrom, began to grow before our eyes. And before long, Ella was wearing a little white robe with a hood and carrying the cross down the aisle. Soon Lee was tagging along with one hand on it to help. And then one day, someone handed Lee the cross for the recessional, and she ran down the aisle. People sort of did a collective gasp. But because my whole life's been spent as a little sister, I was thinking, way to go, girl. restricted environment, we answer the urging of the Holy Spirit in a little different, a little less restrictive manner. That second summer, Reed and I found a house off County Road 7, went back to Tucson, packed up our belongings, and moved in a snowstorm. How the moving van made the front page of the Cook County Herald stuck across Highway 7 is another story. We were once again living in Grand Marais. This time, we had a church. That winter, at the Spirit of the Wilderness was the most exciting time I had ever spent in a church. We would hold a service thinking only a handful might attend, and wind up with double the numbers we had anticipated. Now, I'm a New Englander, and we don't normally talk about the Spirit. If we want to do so, we might say, well, something. So as a New Englander, I'll just say that winter we knew that something was right there in the pews with us. Somehow we all knew in our hearts that things were going to work out. And it's been a lot of work. It's taken compromise and working together to find solutions. I'm really proud of this group. Thinking as an outreach sort of person, we're fulfilling a silent need among the poorest of our community with the Good Samaritan Fund. And when Ruby's Pantry needed a sponge from church, which one stepped up? The smallest one in town, of course. That one that rents the church on Maple Hill. We moved back to Tucson several years ago, as it's kinder to people in our age group. I don't know how much longer we can continue to come back here. It gets hard living off the grid, and being isolated isn't that wise. However, Reed and I are different people, because Spirit of the Wilderness is part of us now, and always will be.
Thank you, Barbara.
Right here. So I'm Carl Hansen, and Reed should be talking next. Reed doesn't want to talk, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Reed. My part is more of a sock drawer to mission story. You have to understand, when we first did that meeting in 2007, July, we collected some money, I think, had been at the very first service, but we weren't actually any entity of any kind whatsoever, except just a group of people getting together to do a service. We weren't a mission, we weren't a parish, we weren't a church, we weren't a 501c3, we weren't anything of anything. And Rolf would take the money and put it in the sock drawer. And that was the way we operated for 2.5 years.
Wow.
All the way until fall of 2009, when we finally were accepted as a mission of the Episcopal Church. When this thing first started, I said to Lee, I'm willing to go and I'll sit in the pew, but I'm not going to be charged anything. I'm not going to do anything. Well, now I'm the staff bookkeeper and have been since the first of 2010. So, Reed and Barbara have provided not only financial resources to do a lot of this stuff, but Reed also provided the spreadsheets and the pro forma and the business plan and the budget and all this stuff. And then we set up QuickBooks, and I was doing QuickBooks too. We collaborated on doing that and getting involved in QuickBooks Online and all sorts of stuff like that. So I have all these financial records, which are kind of entertaining, and I dug back through some stuff. 135 people have given money to this church and told us their name, given us a check or something. Lots of other visitors have put in cash. Over these years, we have 135 contributors. We have 23 pledges this year, 24, and that's pretty amazing. At the very first, the first thing that we have a record of is June 29th of 2008. 16 people showed up, and we collected $155. There were no pledges or anything like that. Just sort of, that's money that went to the sock drawer. And then we had this conversation that we shouldn't just, we all just, brought wine and donated stuff and brought everything and did everything. And then start keeping track of what it's costing to do this, and, people should be getting reimbursed or whatever, it should be shared and recorded. So we actually started keeping records at first of 2010. And then we got this priest that came along, and Mary Ellen, was in Kalamazoo and was an Episcopal priest in the state of Minnesota, Diocese of Minnesota, and also professor, and also a home here. And it took a couple of years to get the whole transition executed, but by 2009, I think, actually moved here and started participating. Well,
June 2008.
Okay, 2008. One of the things, as we prepared for this, we said the reason there are 4 Gospels is because you get different stories. We started trying to do the story from different perspectives. Everybody remembers things differently, and we do have certain records, but
Technically, that is by 2009.
yeah. So I know that Mary Ellen first got paid in March of 2010.
Okay.
So she was here, and then we went to convention, got approved as a mission, and then actually became sort of a formal entity in January of 2010, something like that. So those of you who donated money from 2007 to 2010, if the IRS comes around and says, who did you give that money? You claimed that as a church? I think we're past the statute of limitations for that. But anyway. There's some other things that I want to mention that those of you who have been around know what all this is about Wind Cradle Retreat Center, Wind Cradle Center for Renewal, Wind Cradle, Suzanne and Mary Ellen's place has been a huge part of this organization. We did retreats, we did meetings, and on. Wind Cradle's been huge. The Roan Ridge grant that we got early on that funded Deepening Roots, huge thing. Money came from the diocese, sort of grant. The Good Samaritan Fund, Barbara already mentioned, that huge. Ruby's Pantry is huge. And then in this past couple of years, the Lilly Foundation giving a big grant for a sabbatical going on. And that's all part of our story. And it wouldn't have come together with all of those other pieces that are sort of part of the church and sort of not part of the church. And then music, we talked about music a little bit, boxed and otherwise. Music is huge. And it wouldn't have been about the music. And small groups. We have small groups that meet and have met and classes and a book group way back when and all these different things that have come together through the years, and I love that part. Okay, Lee, got to clean up here.
Last but not least.
Fill in all the rest of the details.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carl.
I forgot about that book group
And milkshakes.
and milkshake. That was
Yes, a lot of what I have has been said in different ways, and this is just a different gospel version. We moved here in